Donald Trump is a master at using a very large number of words to say effectively nothing. And that skill was on display in his epic return to Hugh Hewitt's radio program, who he said is a third-rate broadcaster, and yet he's been on the show twice now in just a couple of weeks. Anyway, here he was asked about climate change, and here are his stances and policies and beliefs.
Do you believe that the temperature of the Earth is increasing, and what would you do if you do believe that vis-a-vis global climate change?
Well, first of all, I'm not a believer in global warming. I'm not a believer in man-made global warming. It could be warming, and it's going to start to cool at some point. And, you know, in the 1920s, people talked about global cooling. I don't know if you know that or not. They thought the Earth was cooling. Now it's global warming. And actually, we've had times where the weather wasn't working out, so they changed it to extreme weather, and they have all different names, you know, so that it fits the bill. But the problem we have, if you look at, you know, our energy costs and all of the things that we're doing to solve a problem that I don't think in any major fashion exists. I mean, Obama thinks it's the number one problem of the world today, and I think it's very low on the list. So I am not a believer, and I will, unless somebody can prove something to me, I believe there's weather, I believe there's change, and I believe it goes up and it goes down and it goes up again, and it changes depending on years and centuries. But I am not a believer, and we have much bigger problems. You know, I talk about global warming. You know, to me, the worst global warming, and I mentioned this to you once before, is nuclear warming. That's our global warming. That's going to be because we have incompetent people, and we have these rogue nations, and not even rogue nations anymore.
Wow. And here was Hugh Hewitt's response.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
That's what you should have said to him.
You should have.
But so the quick side note on Hugh Hewitt here. This is why they bow down to Trump, because nobody was talking about Hugh Hewitt. Then he asks Donald Trump some reasonable questions. Donald Trump gets angry, picks a big fight with him. All of a sudden, Hugh Hewitt's on the CNN debate team.
That's
okay,
true.
And now that's your second huge hit on Hugh Hewitt, who previously was broadcasting from a cave. Right? So now Donald Trump comes back.
Cave in France, please.
Right. He comes, and so what has Hugh Hewitt done since the first interaction with Trump, where he was right? He was right to ask the person who would be the most potentially the most powerful man on earth, hey, do you know what the hell's going on? Right? Let me ask you so we can figure it out before you become the most powerful. So he was right, but what did he do? He bowed his head. And he did this. And he said, oh, no, Donald Trump is right. I'm sorry. It wasn't the right questions. I should have framed it better. It's my fault. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And after he does that, Donald Trump deems to come back on his show. And what happens? Everybody's talking about Hugh Hewitt again. So that's why they do it. If it's for the money, Lebowski, and the fame and the attention. And they're not. Hugh Hewitt is a guy who used to love to pretend to be a man of principle and studied intellect and all that stuff. And all that went out the window, and he went like this to Donald Trump. Oh, please, master. Okay.
All of that is true, but I think that in this case, maybe not knowingly, maybe this isn't why he had him on, but I still think that he's doing a public service because we need to hear insanity like what we heard. I want to get that, we have it written down, what Trump said. I want to get it blown up on a wall and just do an hour video about how every single thing that he said does not connect. A sentence can have 3 parts and none of it has anything to do with the rest of it. He'll start a sentence, but the problem we have, and if you look at our energy costs and all the things that we could do to solve a problem that I don't think exists, I mean, Obama thinks it's the #1 problem, and I think it's very low. If you don't think it exists, it's not on your list of problems. And if it does exist, it shouldn't be low on your list of problems. And why are you talking about energy costs for a half second and then moving on? You weren't even interested in that point. That's why you abandoned it so quickly. None of it makes any sense. But the reason that I wanted to talk about this is because he is so stupid that not only does he attempt to use a talking point to combat climate change, but he can't even use it right. Did you know that in the 1920s they were talking about global cooling? No, they weren't talking about it in the 1920s, you moron. The talking point is that they were talking about it in the 1970s. And look how wrong they were. We thought it was cooling, and now we think it's warming. You couldn't even get that right, and that is bullshit. And I want to make sure that out of this video, they at least understand this. It's simply not the case that scientists thought that there was global cooling, and then they were wrong, and then decades passed, and now we think there's global warming. That's not how it happened at all. The scientists who thought there might be global cooling did not fail. They researched it and found out that it wasn't true. That's not a failure of science. That is exactly what science is supposed to do. And it wasn't that that existed and then the global warming discussion started. Let's bring up this chart. Peer-reviewed papers predicting global warming and cooling from 1965 to 1979. At no point were there more articles about global cooling than global warming. Even as far back as the 1970s, and especially by the 1980s, they already understood that it was extraordinarily likely that warming was going on, and that research has only spread and been confirmed time and time again since then. He said in that stupid monologue that he had, and maybe somebody could prove it to me, but if not, it cannot be proven to you, because not only do you not understand the language of all of these hundreds and hundreds of peer-reviewed articles from decades and multiple countries that have tons of information about how global warming is not up to you to decide, but you haven't even tried reading them.
Jono Unchained. Okay, I like it.
Because it's so understandable.
So, John, I don't think you're being fair to him. He said, and this is a quote, "I believe there is weather."
He doesn't believe there's weather.
Are you not merciful? Are you not merciful? Okay, so you know who Donald Trump is? First off, he's given too much credit, believe it or not. He's the female Sarah Palin. I mean, you know, we're being unfair to Sarah Palin because, you know, we make fun of the way she talks and we think she's uniquely unintelligent. But it's not unique. Donald Trump is in the same exact category. You know, she has this annoying habit of adding ing to the end of everything.
Yeah.
Or, you know what I'm saying? So in the middle of this speech, Donald Trump would have been like, global warming being what it is. No, that's even not good enough for something. But, like, you know, I would be not believing in the warming of the planeting, right? So, yeah, it's a little bit more grating. It's slightly weirder. But the lack of logical connection from one thought to another is nearly identical with Sarah Palin and Donald Trump. And I figured out as he's doing the ramblings of a madman here on this show who he is. He's that uncle in your family when you go back for Thanksgiving. Usually you're back from college, and then you're surprised to find out how stupid that one uncle was. And he's the one telling you about an email chain he got.
Yeah,
Like,
that he just
yeah,
believes.
this thing, I found out the weather's there. Yeah, that's true, but it goes up and down. They had this thing in the 1920s where it was global cooling. But now it's warming. You see that? The goddamn liberals. And then you're like, Jesus, when did I know he was such an idiot before I went to college?
Yeah.
Like, he's that uncle.
That's part of growing up, is realizing the people you knew when you were young are dumb. Yeah. And by the way, as they also talked about in the article talking about this, there's this popular meme going around of a Time article from the 70s showing a penguin, and it says, how to survive the oncoming ice age, which of course is not real. It was a Photoshop job, but nobody cares to even look. Although thankfully recently on Think Tank we did a video of multiple ways that you can confirm or deny a viral story. So look into that. It would have easily shown that the penguin thing wasn't real.
YouTube.com/thinktank. We didn't say anything.
Yeah.
Okay. And by the way, and Donald Trump, I like the way he's sitting between us here. Like, he's lording over us in a sense, right? But he is, in a sense, America's crazy uncle. He's been around since I was a kid. When I came back from college, he was the one doing the crazy ramblings of a madman. Yeah, buy my steaks, buy my Monopoly set, buy this, I'm the greatest, you're that. Yeah. You know? So he's been at this for a long, long time. It's just now, unfortunately, he's found a receptive audience today.
Yeah, and what I love about him is that you have these different Republican candidates who are the embodiment of a kind of crazy or a kind of extremism. You have the Huckabee. You know what kind he is. You have, the Jeb, who's like totally the establishment, do whatever the establishment wants. You have the Carly Fiorina, who wants to personally kick Putin in the nuts and start a war. But he is the perfect embodiment of basically all of them. It doesn't even have to be genuine. He's not religious, but he'll attack the Muslims. Sure, the Muslims are scary, and he's rich, and he supposedly is going to both cut the taxes and raise the tax. He appeals to all different types of crazy all at the same time. It's like a buffet for Republicans, for conservatives. There's something that every type of crazy conservative can like.
It's a buffoon buffet.